Hey guys, I found myself with a little bit of time, and I don't know if it's going to be enough time to necessarily finish this video, but we'll give it a go and see how we're feeling. This is my final game from the New South Wales GT. I was sitting, well, we had 20, 18 to 38, 0 and 8, so 46 after 4. Which is decent, but I think it was like 7th out of 19 or something. Like, it was nothing too flash. And I drew some vampires, and basically what my opponent had was two big blocks of skellies, one with shields and Legion banner, and one with halberds and raiding standard. And he had a big Lamia courtier on the Court of the Damned, and he had a count of Lamia with like Kingslayer and Nightcrown and Commandment, and basically he had two big blocks and he had some support. So we had a big unit of Bat Swarms, 8 Direwolves, 2 units of Great Bats, 4 Winged Reapers, and 2 units of 4 Vampire Knights. So looking at this list mainly, I think I've got pretty good answers to the Vampire Knights because I'm faster than them. The Winged Reapers, same deal, but they're a tougher unit. Like, it doesn't really matter if they charge or if I charge, they're good no matter what. Whereas the Vampire Knights going from Strength 7 to Strength 5 is a pretty big drop, obviously. Wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to fight his big blocks. It would obviously depend on how the game went. Because realistically, I don't think I can outgrind either of them. And mainly my theory with them was I'd probably just try and avoid them more than anything else. What was the objective on this one? Oh, objective was just scoring units for this one. There we go. My finger's in the way again. Well done. Okay, so this is after my turn 1 moves. We played marching columns, and my opponent dropped his dogs over here, then his bats, then some vampire knights. I was dropping... I think I was dropping from the other side, and it was like razors, then mongrels, then my bunker, basically. And then when I could, I just dropped for everything. So my opponent chose his side, I believe at least, because I definitely got to drop everything to go for first. And he basically sat all his things in the corner. So a few things that I sort of thought about immediately were, one, with all his sort of like his support threats basically over here and chaff over here, I was a little bit worried about losing this side. Luckily for me, I can sort of throw out the Centaurs as just like a ballistic missile because they're so fast. They'll do some damage to something, and if they die, they die. Sucks that they're a scoring unit, but if I have to do that, I can. And then light troops on the chariots pretty much make them able to dance around a bit if I need to. And then it was just sort of what I could do, swinging around sort of 3 big blocks over here, focusing on really one side of his army. I did notice when he started sort of moving around, because he dropped... it didn't matter for the dogs because they have Vanguard, but because he dropped the bats away from his general started over here. So his general was here, and that's his big BSB. They couldn't march unless he sort of brought his general over. His general's only 12 inches, so they were actually less useful chaff for the early turns than they could have been, given that they can't march. I was pretty much, given how he was cornered as well, I was pretty much just, look, send it right at you. You don't have shooting or anything. I don't need to worry about cover. I'm just going in and having a scrap. Right. So this is after his turn 1 movement, I believe. He's already moved up to chaff with his bat swarms. He declared a charge, I believe, with both of his vampire knights, if not only one of them. Maybe just this one that was closer. It was a 6/6 into my chariots here. who are just like, their corner is basically on that hill so that I can see off, but didn't want to get much closer. He basically declared that knowing that he would have chaff to block the chariots if he wanted, like if he needed to, if he didn't make it. So it was like, this seems all pretty good. I'm not really sure why he used up his chaff now, because it seems like he would have another turn where that would be useful. I don't know, maybe there was an aggressive plan that I'm not seeing here, but yeah, it seems like these guys would have been useful hanging back for another turn, I think. Onto my turn. These Centaurs have just failed a charge, basically. So they had a charge into the flank of these Vampire Knights, and they could overrun into the other Vampire Knights. I would have them in range because of the water and the hill of both Stone Skin and Healing Waters. And the overrun into the other Vampire Knights, we measured it out, it was really close, but basically they were going to be out of line of sight of the Winged Reapers. So I was looking at that, it was like a 9 on the dice, I think. So 19 away, but, 9's about a 50-50 on Swift Stride. But pretty much if I'd gotten that, I'd be looking at it going like, I probably won the game, and now it's just a matter of how much, because I'd get, 700 points and 2 scoring units, and then, because he's so slow, I don't even have to fight him if I don't want to from there. I can just go, this doesn't look good, I'm going to head home. But we didn't make it, so what did I have to do? This is actually my mongrels after I charged in and killed all his bat swarm. So I had to chaff the big halberd block so they didn't fight my mongrels. I'm not sure if I didn't like that fight or not, but because I was going to be pumping magic elsewhere, I wanted to chaff rather than sort of see how the mongrels do, basically. So I think maybe my Centaurs were... I think it's a little bit deceptive because of the angle of the camera, but they were a decent distance away from both the Knights and the Winged Reapers still. So they were maybe like a 8 away from the Knights and I think a 10 away from the Winged Reapers. So I basically felt that he's probably not going to make it in with both. It was basically a gamble where I was like, I'll put some magic on the chariots. If I need to, I'll just run them away, depending on what wants to charge them. Or depending on what's going on, but I was sort of gambling that these Winged Reapers wouldn't be able to make it into my Centaurs, basically, which is a risk, but at this, given my placing in the tournament and how I was sort of taking it anyway, I was like, I'm happy to take that risk, basically. I'm not sure if it'll be in the next pick or this one. No, it's a little bit too far away. Okay. So these Knights both tried to charge my chariots, and it was minimal. It was like needing a 6 and a 7. Maybe that was... I don't know. Well, whatever it was, one of these guys needed very little to get in. Sorry, 6 and a 7 is definitely wrong. I think one of them was like a 6 or a 7. The other one was like a 4 they needed or something. But whatever it was, one of them failed, which was... okay, I guess. I still didn't really love how this hill ended up looking. So he's moved his general over to the big block with the court so that his chaff could come and get in the way. The unit that was further away got in and beat the chariots. They didn't look like they even killed one. But basically he stopped my Minotaurs from charging, he stopped my Centaurs from charging, couldn't get into the flank over here. And he's didn't charge my chaff, so he didn't have a way to get rid of them. But I didn't love the position of these guys on the hill because I don't have anything to threaten them. But I think with my magic, I'm kind of okay charging the Razortusk in there, probably. I actually don't remember this part of the game, so everything I'm saying might just be wrong. No, I ended up charging the Razortusk into the chaff instead, hoping to get an overrun into the Winged Reapers just to hold them up. I ended up bringing my other chaff out to chaff his big block, and I just moved up basically so that my his halberds were blocked and I had 2 threats coming in on them now. I think what my plan here was basically he's running out of chaff. I'm starting to surround him. If these vampire... Like, because I had 2 binding scrolls in the list. So, he didn't have great magic. I think it was like an Evoc Master and a Witchcraft Adept, maybe. I'm not sure. But essentially, with whatever spells he took, I wasn't that concerned about, like, if I have a binding scroll, I figured I'd be in a pretty good spot for the magic phase. Yeah, because... Oh, sorry, he's got 2 Arises. So, and then he's got 1 Snipe on his Evoc guy. So he's got, like, 2 combat buffs. And then maybe a combat buff on the other guys. So, on the Witchcraft guy. So, maybe it was Wheel Turns. So I'm like, if I bind Wheel Turns, I can stop either one of the Evoc buffs. And, like, you know, if you're Strength 7 and you go and reroll the wound, it doesn't really matter, right? So I think my theory with these guys was if they charge my Centaurs, he's going to have 8 or 9 attacks, hitting me on 3s and wounding me on 2s. He might kill 5 or 6 guys, but then I'm still going to have all of my Great Weapon attacks back, and I'll almost certainly be steadfast. So I basically just figured I can, if one of them charged me, I can take that. I think that's what I was thinking at the time anyway. And it makes sense to me when I'm thinking about it now. So I'm pretty happy with how the board's looking. So obviously he's using his, I'm using my chaff up now, but you know, if he charges it, I've got some pretty good combo charges to send in. And it's sort of like he's a little bit like me in game 3. He's sort of mainly just stuck in his 1 deployment zone, and he's allowed me to go and, like, basically get what I view as a pretty good position in terms of getting the charges I want, getting combos off, and that sort of thing. Where do we go next? It's pretty much the same thing, right? Yeah, I mean, this is just after, I think. So I killed the bat swarms with my Minotaurs. Chariot killed... Oh, it's not bat swarms, the giant bats. And then the Chariot failed by 1. He needed like an 8, I think, and he got a 7. So he just sat in front of those Winged Reapers instead. I think they're... No, they can just see me anyway. Yeah, basically, he wasn't doing much of anything, but he wasn't being seen by the Knights either, so it wasn't too bad. Okay, so here, essentially, he sent... okay, so... How did that work out? What turn is this? This is like... So what? This is... I just charged him. So there's a turn in between. I know we've missed like a turn in between. I'm not really sure what's going on here. But I'll just tell you what's happening here anyway. So essentially, his Winged Reapers charged my Minotaurs. I sent in my Razortusk and my Gargoyles into his halberd block. The reason being I needed to send in the Gargoyles or the Razortusk couldn't make it because they would have blocked me. It didn't really matter to me there. I was like, you know, the Gargoyles will do more damage than they take, probably. And the Razors should handily win that combat, particularly because I got a buff of some kind off, like maybe reroll to hit. My Centaurs, and this is like the weird order where I don't know what we've missed in between, but the Centaurs killed his Vampire Knights, and then I was in a position where I could either get double charged by the Knights and the Winged Reapers, or I can overrun, try and get past the hill, which I didn't quite make, and the Winged Reapers wouldn't be able to see me. Sorry, just got a call. Where was I? Yeah, so trying to avoid getting double charged, and I was like, look, if I get flank charged by the Knights, I might do some damage to them. They might not catch me, maybe I rally. Because they're fearless, they can't flee, so I was like, well, like from the charges, which otherwise I would have. So I just overran there. Didn't have great hopes for them because I just lost like 7 blokes to Vampire Knights when I charged them, which felt like a lot. They do have Blooded Horn Totem as well, so, you know, they're 3 attacks each at the moment. It was sort of the thing, like, maybe if these Knights whiff, I'll be able to get a low discipline check to stick around or something. These Winged Reapers had Spectral Blades up, and they put all of their attacks into my BSB. I let Spectral Blades go through, basically, because I was like, well, they're hitting on 3s, they're wounding on 3s. The BSB is probably dead anyway. So I just let it go through, knowing he's going to put all his attacks in there anyway. And like stopped other things instead. What ended up happening in that combat, though, was he had what, like 4 attacks each? So 8 plus 6, 14. I think he did 11 wounds to me, and I saved 9 of them. I'd already taken a wound from a snipe too. So like my PSP was needing to pass 9 out of 11 4-up wards, and he just did it, which felt pretty rude, but it was kind of the story of this game, to be honest. Like, you know, Aaron going, oh, I need 4 for this charge. Oh, nope, triple 1s. Alright, I'm just going to kill this BSB, get some points, and then the Minotaurs will butcher him. Like, nope, BSB's going to live. And what actually happens in this Centaur combat, which is they get flank charged by 4 Vampire Knights, an identical unit, who didn't have their lances because they didn't charge, had just done 7 wounds to me, and he did like 2 wounds to me, and we drew the combat or something silly. Anyway, killed all the Winged Reapers. As you can see, the Centaurs ended up turning around. I think this is after a couple of rounds of combat, because here I've wiped out the what are they called? Skellies with halberds. Actually, something significant did happen, because you can see this chariot here fleeing. So if we go back here, after he killed these gargoyles, I basically had this choice where I was like, I can send my chariot into the flank and my Minotaurs into the front, and I was like, I don't really think that I need to, based on how the game's going. I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but ended up just going, you know what, you know, game 5, I might as well just do it. The Minotaurs needed, I think, a 7. They failed. The chariot went into the flank on his own. I got Blooded Horn up on the chariot, so he had a charge and a flank, so he needed to do 5 wounds to like hold the skeletons there, and he just absolutely flubbed, ran away. And what that meant was that Aaron had a charge on a 7, I believe, into the Minotaurs, and he failed it. So he could have, at that point, if he'd gotten in with the Minotaurs, 7's like a 50-50, probably beats them because they were unbuffed at the time. I'd sent my magic towards the Razortusk Chariot. I'm assuming he wins with the Vampire Knight over here. So I'm like, I will end up losing, what, 1, 2 scoring units. I've gotten off him 1, 2. And then my bunker's in trouble and everything's going bad, basically. So I was like, that was actually a really stupid risk to take, to try and send the Minotaurs in when I really didn't need to. I could have just sort of positioned around and not even attacked him if I didn't want to. But because he failed that charge, as a continued string of bad luck, it basically placed him a little bit further forward than this. And yeah, you can see basically got the mongrels in the side. That last gargoyle had to move out of the way, so they both went in. The Minotaurs went in the front. And in 1 round of combat, it just popped the entire block, both characters. And the Centaur over here even managed to win out on his own against these Vampire Knights. So a game of just like exceptionally good luck for me, really. But I did think that it was a good sort of position for me from deployment, where like I had some good pressure coming down this flank and, you know, all that jazz. So there were a few hairy moments in the game, and Aaron's dice were just awful. But in terms of how I played it, I was like, look, some of the risks I knew at the time were probably mistakes, but I was taking them because I was like, it's sort of more interesting. And then they didn't end up punishing me anyway. because of just... I mean, I guess, like, failing a 7, I failed a 7 to get into him, he failed a 7 to get into me, but over the course of the game where Aaron's just had awful dice the whole way through, it was like, it just... Even in the moments where, like, it could, like, you know, one moment of decent luck would have turned it around for him, he didn't get it, which... I don't know, it made it a little bit silly at times. Like, the Centaurs being able to just beat up those guys who charged from the flank was just like, this is kind of stupid. Felt a little bit unfair and dirty at the time, but yeah, look, in the end, I took it. I got a 20-0, and that actually pushed me up to 3rd for the event. So that was good. That was nice to get. Overall, in terms of the list, I'm happy with a few things. I really like the advent or the charging 10 Centaurs when the Razortusk Chariots are around. Minotaurs are always good. Minotaurs are always handy. I was surprised by, and I have been in like the few games that I've used them in before, how decent the Razortusks are, particularly if you chuck like a Druidism spell onto them, because they're very resilient, and although they're like dodgy weapon skill, they're pretty good. Because they're not that expensive either. So I sort of view them as quite disposable. Same as the Chariots. I don't really care. They're rarely important to my battle plan. But in a game like this, where I didn't have to worry about leadership things troubling them, where I could run them out wide, I found them actually really, really helpful. In this game, they were super good clearing out these skeletons. So, yeah, I mean, that was a pretty decent tournament. I had one awful game. The rest of them I'm generally pretty happy with how I played. And I think I'd like to take the combination of Centaurs and Razortusk Chariot in future. Like, I like these boys quite a bit. I'd happily... I think in terms of getting a better list overall, it needs more flexibility. It needs more pretty much just single models. But yeah, like it did what it did. It was fine for me. I think if I'd played sort of closer to the top for more of the event, like if I was playing like Sam and the stronger players at the event all tournament, I think I probably would have my list would have been exposed a little bit more for the lack of flexibility that it has, but particularly for at least like a casual thing. Like, I took this mainly as like a, you know, there's not much to complain about in this Beast Herds list. It's like, look, I'm just blocks. I'm not dancing out of your arc. I'm not shooting at you. Like, I'm just here to come fight. Can you fight me? It seemed a pretty inviting list, and it seemed to work better than I expected to. Though I think a big part of that is the fact that the Centaurs projected such a threat that it mitigated the fact that I didn't have the flexibility or the single models or anything. So yeah, those are my thoughts. It was quite a bit of fun. I don't have anything on the immediate horizon in terms of games. Masters is coming up, but I can't go to that one, so not able to make it. And I don't think there's any other events that I'm heading to, so not sure what will be happening, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. Thanks for checking in, guys.